Sleek, fast and built for reconnaissance, the Panzer II Luchs, or Lynx in English, was Germany's answer to the need for a nimble scout tank during the later years of World War II. Welcome back to Lessons from the Front, and today I've got a special surprise for you. Not only will we be looking at the specs of this tank in bolt action, but we've got a guest today, Tom, a friend and supporter of this channel, waiting for us in Bovington at the Tank Museum. Let's head across to Tom now.
So this is probably one of my favourite tanks from the German World War II era, and it's probably one of the smallest tanks from the German World War II era. So this is the Panzer II Luchs or Lynx, it is one of my favourite tanks because it's a tank built to a specific design. It's not a combat tank, it's a reconnaissance tank. So it's designed for reconnaissance. So it has a couple of features that allow for that. So up on the top it has a small aerial mount, and round the other side it has a large aerial mount, which is actually on a pivot that allows the turret to rotate and the aerial to get out of the way. One of my favourite features of the Panzer II L is actually the back of the turret, which is a pure design feature. So it was designed in such a way that the tank commander had a cushioned seat on the back turret hatch, allowing him to sit there and use it as an observation post. He would then basically hide his tank, sit on the back of the turret, use his binoculars or therm glass, look out for enemy units, and he would basically scout them out. And then he would use his two radio sets through his radio operator. Now this is quite a unique thing for Germans, in that what they did was he had a dedicated radio man down here. So, and here you can see the larger radio. So the idea was a smaller radio, so it was so that he could talk directly to his unit. The larger radio was so that he could send information directly back to headquarters. He would use his radio man here alongside his driver to communicate information so that he wasn't distracted by working a radio set. He was purely firing messages down to his radio operator, who was then sending them back to headquarters. In the front then, he then had a gunner. So this was equipped with a 20mm autocannon, which had high explosive and armour piercing rounds. It could penetrate up to about 40mm of armour up close. It wasn't designed though really as an offensive gun. It was more close protection to get itself out of the situation and move to a new position so that it could start reporting information again. This was a vital piece of equipment for German panzer divisions, in that it allowed them to have up-to-date, accurate information. These vehicles would be used for things like reporting enemy troop movements, enemy armour movements, reporting fall of shot from larger vehicles and things like that. There were only ever 100 produced though, because they were built in the same factory as the Panther, and as the war went on, armoured vehicle production took priority over reconnaissance vehicle production. But this tank is really ingenious. What they did was, over the Panzer II, they put a bigger engine in it. They put a 160 horsepower Maybach engine into it, petrol engine. It gave it the ability to ramp up to about 60 kilometers an hour. They also put wider tracks with interleaved road wheels, which for the 230s at mainly 14, so I'll bring you down here to the road wheels. For the 230s at 14 had very different side effects. So these road wheels, they're rubber coated, which reduces road noise, but as well they're great in somewhere like Bocage country, which can be a bit boggy, a bit muddy. Great place for tanks to get bogged down. they allowed them to fit a much wider track, much larger, wider track. In somewhere like the Soviet Union, in winter, when this packs up with mud and ice and it freezes up, being a tank crew member, then you would have to chip your wheels out. You'd have to get in there with a pry bar or a hammer or something like that, and you would have to break all the ice off your wheels. Not a fun task to do when you're already freezing cold. But as well, they sent out stowage kits, and these were put on at the discretion of the crew, much like the camouflage painting on the armour. So crews weren't given the equipment to paint these necessarily. They were sent the tins of paint, but they weren't necessarily given the actual equipment to apply the paint. So what they would do is they would use anything. Some had mobile workshops and had mechanics who would apply the paint using airbrushes, things like that, down to a guy with a bit of old rag on a stick just dabbing the paint on wherever. So long as it broke up the pattern of the tank, that was the important thing. They would then add things like these stowage kits, which allowed them to carry more equipment and more supplies on the vehicle, which obviously is a good thing. You want to be able to carry as much equipment as you can. You've got things like extra ammunition bins. So these carried 10 round magazines for the autocannon. It could carry about 300 rounds of ammunition, which was an improvement over the Panzer II's 200. But it allowed them to carry extra equipment, extra ammunition, spare parts, other things like that. And unfortunately I can't get inside this, but if you watch the Tank Museum's video on it, this is absolutely perfectly preserved inside, and it is all 100% original. They were looking at redoing the engine on it, repairing it, but they actually said that would destroy the original parts on the engine, and there's already a running one in France, so they were like, well, let's make this a perfectly preserved piece. But it is ridiculously well preserved, down to the fact that the leather seat on the back hatch hasn't actually perished yet. So on this back hatch here, you can't see it massively well, but on this back hatch here, there is actually a leather seat for the commander to sit on. That is still intact, that is still perfectly preserved.
Thank you, Tom, for giving us a close-up view of the Luchs at the Tank Museum and for sharing your knowledge of this fascinating vehicle. I personally found the concept of dedicated radio operators interesting, and that leather fold-out seat at the back of the turret. I'm certain other viewers were fascinated too. If you're watching this video, please let Tom know that you enjoyed learning from him too in the comments below, and add any valuable information or interesting information you may have about the Luchs. I admire gamers who have the skill and patience to paint their own markings on their tanks, as you can see Tom has done in this photograph of his 3 Panzers that he uses in bolt action. And that brings us to a brief look at the Luchs' stats in bolt action version 3. So the Luchs is a light tank with damage value of A+. As it was historically, it is armed with 2 weapons in the turret. The 20mm automatic cannon that has a range of 48 inches on the table, getting to roll 2 dice when taking shots, but with a penetration of only 2, would need a little luck if wanting to do more than just pin other tanks. The gun can fire HE rounds as well, and can therefore be quite annoying to infantry with 2 dice at 1-inch templates each. You could opt to fire the coaxial instead, and with the Hitler buzzsaw rule, you'd get 4 dice roll when firing what was historically the MG34. However, more importantly, this light tank has the recce rule and is fast. So that allows it to get out of trouble and also move an additional 3 inches off-road when advancing. So instead of moving 9 inches like other tanks, it can move 12 inches. That's 24 moving double speed off-road and 48 inches moving double speed on the road. And it's super useful when running, as I discovered in a recent game when I was able to run my Luchs off the table, earning myself 3 objective points in a recent game, and you can look on the history of my channel to see that game in a doubles game not that long ago. So that brings us to the end of another episode of Lessons from the Front. I trust you enjoyed the contents of this video. Please do give it a thumbs up and a like, and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and if you enjoy the contents of my videos. So then, until next time, happy gaming!